Okay, you're on live.
Great. Well, welcome everyone to the Small Business and Nonprofit Grant Overview webinar. We wanted to do this to have a chance to, on a larger scale, answer some of the questions. We received some applications, and I think yesterday we made our first 2 checks out for $30,000. And this is really, we were also launching some changes because after getting into some of the applications, we've made some changes to facilitate it as much as possible. But before we go into the applications, the documentations, and what the process is, we wanted to have some welcoming words. Commissioner Roybaum.
Thank you. And I just want to say hello to everybody and thank you for being here. I'm very excited to see this coming forward and just seeing the thinking outside the box and working together. I'm Commissioner Henry Roybaum, the board chair for the Santa Fe County Commission. I'd like to begin with a sober acknowledgement of the deep impact that COVID-19 has had in our communities, in every individual. There's a lot of, I'll say, we came out of winter last year and, a lot of people get cabin fever during that time of year. And then we went straight into the coronavirus or COVID-19. And it's just been a really challenging time for a lot of families and just the whole nation, the whole world at that. And so it's had a huge impact on communities, our families, our local businesses here in Santa Fe County. Overall, I know that this virus has affected us all in multiple ways, and it is with deep sympathy that I speak and compassion to everybody today. I understand that these are trying times, and I'm here to let you know that Santa Fe County, the city of Santa Fe, and the town of Edgewood recognize the difficulties each of you are going through. At the same time, we also recognize the resilience and the perseverance and dedication to our community. Each of you are demonstrating every day, the resiliency and compassion to support one another. And, when you get out of bed and open your eyes or open up your business or organizations to face other day to day and serve our community, this leaves me with a hope that you all are lifeblood of our community. And I know that our local businesses are the backbone of our community, a vital component of which makes Santa Fe County so unique and special. And when I just want to say that I owe all of you thousands of thank yous. I mean, you've done a great job. We persevered together as a community. It's our hope that this grant program will provide much needed relief to your organization or business and communicates the commitment and immense admiration and appreciation that Santa Fe County, the city of Santa Fe, and the town of Edgewood have towards all of you, our special local businesses. We are excited to collaborate with this endeavor and work together, because as I've said in the past, when our governmental entities come together and work together, we're very powerful and we can make things happen that are really positive for our community. We are here to serve you and work by your side and be by your side. I hope this webinar is helpful and informative, and I know that staff from all the governing bodies have and will continue to work very hard on your behalf. I mean, questions, comments, I'm always available. I have my constituent liaison professionals that are always here to help. Ambra Baca and Olivia Romo. So, we're here to help. And so I just want to encourage everybody to apply for this funding. It's not always easy. Local businesses sometimes will hesitate to ask for help, but please come forward and help. Come forward for help. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Roybaum. Thank you. Thank you for those words. I appreciate it. Mayor Bassett.
Morning, everybody. I am John Bassett, Mayor for the town of Edgewood.
nobody knows any better than we do the trouble you've had with COVID through all these last 7 or 8 months and the effect it's had on our economies. You small businesses have borne a lot of the brunt of this pandemic. This program here you are seeing today is an attempt to help you weather the storm you've been going through and get out to the other side as best as you can. We want to work with you to try to help you keep your doors open. The town of Edgewood, Santa Fe County, and the city of Santa Fe have worked together to apply and be awarded funds for this program. We work together to implement this program and make the funds available to you. And we will continue to work together to see that the money gets out to you, the people who need it the most. None of us can get through this pandemic alone, but maybe together we can help each other as we move forward. The application process is difficult. It's got some hurdles in it. But I would encourage all of you to go ahead and apply for it. Get out there and do what you can to help yourselves. One of the reasons we did this in partnership with the county and the city of Santa Fe, it would increase our capacity to be able to give help out to the community. And we've run a vigorous advertising campaign trying to get the word out about this program. And we've done everything we can to try to, get the word out that, hey, there's help available, and, encourage everybody to try to participate and join in with it. It's been a concerted, a collaborative process, basically because we know how bad the pandemic has hurt everybody. And so we're trying our level best to do something to help you all out. We are in this together, and we want to, help our communities, our small businesses survive and thrive. And we need to make sure that you have all the information you can get to make this work for you. You are the key and, to the economic success of our communities, and we want you to do well. The two things to take away from today's program is you need to apply, and if you need any help, any questions answered, people are available to help you with them. You can reach out to any of us here at the town or at the county level or the city of Santa Fe. There's people there waiting to receive your inquiries and help you out. We want to thank you for attending the webinar, taking time out of, I'm sure, your busy schedules. And I hope you come away from this more informed about the grant program here and how to access it and get help with it. And tell your fellow business owners, people that aren't here this morning, if you run into anybody, let them know about it. Encourage them to come out and apply and take advantage of it, because these are difficult times, and working together, we'll try to get through them as best as we can and encourage them to apply. So thank you for all taking time today to be here with us and to listen in to what the group has to tell you. And we look forward to hearing from you and working with you. So on behalf of the town of Edgewood, good luck with your applications, and we wish you well with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bassett. Mayor Weber.
Thank you, Liz. Hi, everybody. Alan Weber here from the city of Santa Fe. And you can tell, Commissioner and Mayor, we're all in this together. This is a united group ready to go to work and help our small businesses, our nonprofits make it through this tough time, because we all are in it together. This is a community. Doesn't matter what the governing body is. We are a community that stands together. We care about each other. And we know just how important the lifeblood of this community is when it comes to small businesses, mom and pop businesses, nonprofits. You're the folks who make this place what it is, all of our places together what it is. We are a group of people who care about each other, and we want to help you make it through these tough times. COVID is a challenge, and we are going to have to learn how to live with it and get through it and keep the best of our community strength working together. I know firsthand that everybody on this call who's an attendee is going to get great help, great instruction. There's a team across the board that's ready to take your questions, help you with the process to get the grant money. Don't forget, it is grant money. It's not loan money. It's the best you can get from local government when it comes to help. Every single one of you, as a business person or as a nonprofit, you are entrepreneurs. That's in your blood. That's in your DNA. And the moment we're in requires you to be entrepreneurial. We all have to pivot and change and adapt to these very tough health circumstances, and then the after effect of the health circumstances, the economic challenge. So be nimble, be agile, be resilient, think creatively. If you've got questions, we've got a team ready to help you. They can help you think about new ways to offer your services or provide your products. They want you not only to make it through this period of time, I think we all want to come out of it more creative and more adaptive than we've ever been before. I know city government, county government, town government, we're all having to adapt. We can't just keep doing what we've always done. We got to be nimble and creative and thoughtful and resilient. And if that's true for the public sector, that's where the private sector lives every day of its life. So use this time, use the resources, use the grant money, use the talent that's at your disposal to think about new options, new ways of doing business that meet the challenge of COVID and come out of it ready to change, ready to serve the community. We're here to help you. We believe in you 100%. We are there with you 100%. We're all in it together. This is a great webinar. If you know people who couldn't come, it's being recorded. They can watch it whenever they want. If you want to watch it again and take more notes, watch it again. It's going to be on YouTube. You can retune in, get a group of your friends together, watch it as a group, use it as a learning opportunity so that as we go through COVID times, we come out of it stronger, smarter, healthier, more resilient, and really together, because we are all in it together. That's the big message. You see it from every one of us as an elected official, all of our staff, they're cooperating to make things work for you. So thanks for tuning in. Liz, thanks for getting us all together. Back to you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. We really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you very much. Liz Camacho, I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. City of Santa Fe Economic Development. I know that we have some questions that are coming in live, and Alex Fitzgerald, who will now be presenting, has been answering some of those. You can also feel free to put in questions in the YouTube chat as well. And I don't know if you'll be staying around, Mayor Bassett, Mayor Weber, Commissioner Roybaum. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your words of support and reassurance. And now I think we're going to move over to Alex Fitzgerald, who will be going over a presentation. We have some questions that are coming in, Alex, and I don't know if you prefer for all the questions to be at the end, or if you would like for us to just jump in sometimes and kind of give you when questions come up.
Liz, I'm monitoring the questions that are coming in, and some of the questions are quite good. They're tricky, and I'm hoping that the presentation will answer a lot of those questions, but I do want to address them at the end of the presentation, so just thought I'd let you know.
Excellent. So we'll do that. Chris will be trying to type up some answers as he goes along. Some of the questions, they may be answered as the presentation is done. And so Chris will kind of take care of monitoring them, so then we can go through them at the end of Alexander's presentation. So I will hand it over to Alexander Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Liz. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Fitzgerald. I'm with Santa Fe County, work in the Community Development Division with Economic Development. And I'm super excited to be here to help provide as much knowledge and clarification as we can about this process. I'll just start by saying this has been a learning curve for everyone. You know, it is something that we reached out to DFA about once they received the money. We put an application together, received the funding, and we had to build this program completely by scratch with some help from DFA, the Department of Finance, from the state. But it's very much a new program, and we just ask for as much patience as we go through this. We understand there has been some tedious requirements and things of that nature, and just want to let you all know we are here to help you out, and we are here to provide as much information as possible. And after this call, feel free to reach out to me personally or send an email to the email that will be provided within this presentation. That being said, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your time. I'll move to the next slide. Let me see. You'll see here the agenda. We had the introduction, opening remarks. Thank you very much for the commissioner, the mayor of the city and mayor of the town of Edgewood. It's very good to hear from them. We'll move into just a broader overview about the funding and the grant and how it's all come together. And then we will step into the overall process for submitting an application, what we're looking for, what needs to be done. And then we'll have a time for question and answers. So if you have any questions as they come along, feel free to submit them in that chat. Chris will be monitoring that, answering them as he can, and then we will also talk about them at the end of the presentation. With that being said, I'll kick it off to Lee DiPietro to give an overview about the funding, where it's coming from, things of that nature.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lee DiPietro with Santa Fe County. We just want to tell you a little bit about the funding and then an overview about what's eligible within the funds that are available. So the program is funded through the Federal CARES Act and is being administered by the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration. The county, the city, and the town of Edgewood submitted a joint proposal back in August for funding, and we received $3.6 million in September was awarded to the partnership. All of the funds from the grant must be expended by the end of the year, so by December 30th, 2020. It's a very short window for us, for everyone. Next slide. So the grant overview. Small businesses and nonprofit applicants can receive up to $15,000 for eligible reimbursable expenses. What is important here is this is a reimbursement grant program, so only grant funding for expenses that an applicant has already incurred are eligible to be reimbursed at this time. The eligible expenses are broken down into two buckets, if you will, from DFA. One is business continuity, and the second one is business redesign. And you'll see on the slide that we have included all of the items that are eligible expenses. So for business continuity, it includes non-owner payroll. It includes rent payments if you're renting a space for your business or nonprofit, any type of scheduled mortgage payments that have already been paid, insurance, utilities, or marketing expenses. Within the business redesign category, we are allowed to reimburse you for spending for any reconfiguration of physical space that allowed you to keep your business open or reopen, and any PPE for adherence to COVID safe practices, such as installing plexiglass barriers. We can reimburse you for purchasing for web conferencing to be able to keep your business open through Zoom or a webinar, PPE for employees, or any type of temporary structures that we use to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. When you are completing your application, we will ask you for documentation in support for eligible expenses within these two categories that have been defined by DFA. It is important to note that funds will be allocated on a first come, first served basis. Next slide. So here is an overview of the steps to submit an application. You will see when you open up an application that you can in fact determine your own eligibility. There are a few items at the top of the application that you need to meet that will be discussed by Alex a little bit later. And so it's important that you take that step to determine it before you actually complete an application. If you have questions about that, you may visit partner agencies to not only download the application and the supporting documentations, but to reach out and ask questions and get answers to any items that are of concern before you submit an application. Then in preparation for the application, you need to make sure that you've completed all of the questions within the application and that you have collected the appropriate financial statements in support of your request. There is an Exhibit A that ties back to the DFA buckets of eligible expenses. And then there's some other supporting documentation that is required, for example, a business license. Please make sure that when you're submitting an application that you are only submitting an application to one of the partnering agencies and you have a choice on who you would like to work with. And you can certainly get on the county website and you can download an application and you can see the links to those partnering agencies as well. Alex?
Yeah, thank you for that, Lee. So I'll move into, I'll just start breaking down step by step. Lee painted the broad picture. I'll go into more detail now. So these are the basic eligibility criteria that any business or nonprofit organization will have to adhere to. And they're listed right there. You'll need to be registered as a business or have your business registration within the Santa Fe County limits. So that means you're registered with the city, you're registered with Santa Fe County or the town of Edgewood. You have a business license within one of those jurisdictions. You cannot have more than 50 employees. You have to demonstrate a minimum of a 25% reduction in revenues year over year due to COVID-19. And so an example is, we'll look at March 2019 to March 2020. In April and compare the months year to year. And we need to show, the business needs to show a 25% reduction in revenue in that manner. You cannot exceed revenues of $2 million in fiscal year 2019. So in 2019, you cannot report more revenue than $2 million. All applicants need to be current on the New Mexico state taxes for their business. And this is a reimbursable program. So we're asking that all the expenses that are requested from us, you have documentation of this is the month I purchased it in, and this is how much it was for, and I'm requesting a refund, so to say, a reimbursement on this. And you've had to have been in business prior to March 1, 2019. That allows us to do that year-to-year comparison. These eligibility criteria are eligibility criteria that were handed down to us from the federal government. This is, again, a federal dollars, and it's tied to the CARES Act. And so these are things we have to make sure that all businesses demonstrate before we grant the money out. Step 2, once you determine if you're eligible or not. Step 2 is if you determine that you're eligible, we invite you to go ahead and download an application and the supporting documents. You'll see at the top here, it says at a minimum, each applicant will be required to complete the application. So complete the application and provide Exhibit A. I'm going to show both of these documents in the next slide. You'll get a look at what they look like. But these are the 2 documents at a minimum that an applicant will have to complete, as well as provide financial statements. Now, there's some additional forms that might be necessary. We understand that some people might have filed extensions on their 2019 taxes, and they can't provide that for us. We have an understanding that some people don't have the most robust accounting systems, things of that nature. And so we have created the small business income statement form for small business owners to fill that out, document their revenue, so we can determine reduction of 25% year over year and total revenue in 2019. And the business owner self-certifies that this is true and accurate. And this is a form we've created to help those really, maybe new businesses or smaller businesses that just aren't working with an accountant every day. They can't afford that. This is a way for for you all to provide us the financial information we need to determine that you meet the eligibility. There's another form out there. You know, if you received the Paycheck Protection Program funding or the emergency or economic disaster injury loan, I forget the exact wording of it, but the EIDL loan, we have to be sure that those funds aren't being used for the same thing. And so, you know, if you reveal and say, hey, I did receive PPP or EIDL, you can still apply for this program, absolutely. We just have to be sure that the money is being spent accordingly and you aren't requesting funding that those things covered as well. And if that's the case, you know, you'll identify that on your application and we'll work forward with you on that. But at a minimum, every application or every applicant will need to submit the application and the detailed report that we call Exhibit A. All documents can be found online on the county, the city, or town of Edgewood's website. It's also listed on our partner agency websites where you also submit the application. I'll move on now and just give you a snapshot of what these documents look like. So you see the application. This is just, you know, application, the very first page. The actual questions that we ask in the application, I think, are approximately 3.5 to 4 pages. And some of it's financial figures, asking that type of information, and the other parts are like narrative, like why are you using this money? What did you use it for? How did it help your business? We're asking questions such as that. So that's the application. That is certainly required. After that is Exhibit A. You'll see Exhibit A in the right-hand corner. This is the other thing that is required for you to submit. You'll see here, there's different columns that need to be completed. I'm not going to go into that just yet because I have another slide dedicated just to the Exhibit A. But this is what it looks like. And so at a minimum, you need both of these documents. If you don't have your tax documents, if you filed an extension and don't have it available, this is the income statement equivalent that we have created for some of those businesses that maybe don't have the means to work with an accountant to get everything together right away, or haven't filed for the 2019 taxes because they have an extension. This is what this form would look like, and this would take the place of the tax document requirement for 2019. I'll move on to the next slide here. So step 3, you've determined your eligibility. Step 2, you've downloaded the application and the Exhibit A, the supporting documents you need. Then you start to prepare the application. And I have 3 questions listed here. These are 3 questions in the applications we've reviewed so far that have given applicants some trouble. And so we just wanted to provide some clarification on what we're looking for here. So areas to pay attention to. On the new application update, questions B9 and B10, we are requesting the total amount of revenue your organization received for the dates requested. On the new application, this is very clear. The old application, which some of you guys might have already been working on, which is totally fine, it'll say we are asking for your gross receipts for the dates requested. The gross receipts, it's equivalent to gross revenues. We're not asking for the taxes you paid. We're actually asking for the revenue that you earned for those months. And that is because we have to be able to determine that there is a 25% reduction in revenue. So I want to provide some clarity on that. I have some following slides with this that actually show what the questions look like, but I'm just going to go through them right now with you all. B13, it's a question and it's asking essentially, please describe the curtailment of your business, why it was closed, if it was closed during the pandemic for whatever reason. We're looking for pretty specific answers. We have to prove when we grant this money that the business lost money due to COVID-19. And how we do that is question B13. If you tell us I was closed down because of the public health orders, I then opened June 1st at 25% and I've been operating at 25% since, it's pretty clear that that reduction in revenue is tied to that and to that reality. And so we're just looking for more information on that. Question B14, it's a question asking, how are you going to use these funds? We've had a lot of applicants come in and some of them have been very detailed. Some of them just say rent and that's it. And I wanted to bring this up because we want to see, we're looking for rent for March, for June and April at this price, and it equals this amount of money all totaled up. If you provide that narrative for us, it'll help us move your application a lot quicker, because if we just see some generic things listed, we're going to have to give you a call and work with you to get the application up to where it needs to be and be more specific. And so if you answer these 3 questions pretty thoroughly, there's really no reason why your application shouldn't move forward unless, some of the financial statements and things like that aren't really making sense to us, and we'll give you a call and follow up on that. So this is question B9 and B10 I mentioned earlier. So these are, we're asking for the total gross revenues for these months. We're doing it for 2019 and 2020. This provides us the opportunity to compare year to year to see 25% reduction in revenue. These figures should also tie into the figures from the financial statements you provide us. If there's a huge discrepancy there, we're going to reach out and say, well, what's going on here? And this is why this question, I wanted to bring it up, because we've had several cases where we've had to contact businesses and just seek some more input and clarification on why their financial statements said they made, $40,000 in January 19, but you reported it as 50,000. And these are just some examples. And I guess the main point of this slide is when you're filling out this information, remember that it ties, and we want it to tie to the financial documents that we're requesting each applicant provide to us. This is the question B13. This is the exact question. I put an example answer. This is an answer I made up. It holds no bearing to reality. It's not from an application. But we're going to ask, if closed, what was the date of the closure of your business or organization? And this organization that I put closed March 1, 2020. The issue for this question, if curtailed, please describe why it was curtailed. A lot of business applicants have been just not filling this out and just putting, we opened June 2nd. That provides us no information. And so this example, I just typed out, just a brief description. We were closed due to public health orders. And then we remained closed after those were lifted due to business training and adaptation for our staff. And then we opened and been operating at 50%. This is something that really helps us when we're reviewing, so we know, okay, it makes sense why these figures have dropped so much, and it's documented on the application. And so when you see this question, be as detailed as possible. Approximations are good, but exact dates and things of that nature are very helpful for us processing the application. And this is question B14. This is the one I mentioned, where a lot of people have been, talking about the expenses they're requesting, but they don't put any dates to it. They don't put any dollar amounts. They just say, rent and PPE for employees. And that's not really helpful for us, because there's certain dates that the funding is qualified for. We can only pay for expenses that began March 1 through December 30th, 2020. But this is a reimbursable program. So technically, we are only going to grant money for expenses that started March 1 through today. And so if you went out and bought something today and then put in your application tomorrow, we can show that you expended that, and we can grant that money to you. But we're not providing funding for any future-oriented expenses. And so when you put just rent or something like that, we're going to definitely reach out and say, will you provide the exact dates for us, so we're sure that you have the documentation for it. We know it falls within the time frame, things of that nature. And so this is the example answer I created. I just made this up in my head, but you can see it's very specific for the dates. It has how much a month it is, and it's 7 months, so that's $10,000. This totally qualifies. If you paid rent and you're requesting reimbursement for that, you could do something like that. PPE for employees and guests. This is another example. And so the more detail we have, the easier it is for us to move your application along, and the less we'll be calling you to follow up and things of that nature. So that's the application. Those are the main questions we've been having, some extra work we're having to do with the applicant. And we're happy to do it, but we want you guys to get this money as quick as possible. We want it to just fly through our system. And if you answer those questions in kind of a similar manner like I proposed, it should move your application a lot quicker. Now we're into Exhibit A. This is the other required form that all applicants would have to provide for us. Here's some quick things about Exhibit A. You're only going to put expenses you wish to be covered that you have already paid for from March 1 through December 30, 2020. The amount you put in here should not exceed $15,000 because that is the grant limit. So if you put $30,000 in here, and it's very likely you have that, that number, that amount of qualified expenses, we would have to kick this back because we cannot do requests more than $15,000 on this. And you should only put requests for, again, reimbursement for expenses you have already documented. And you will fill out this form with your expenses and attach all receipts and send them our way so that we can just verify. This is something that DFA wants us to do is be sure that we have the documentation of those expenses. So a hypothetical would be, let's say that example I provided earlier, we requested $10,000 in rent for 7 months. You would put $10,500 right here for rent. You would not put, let's say the rent's $1,500. You would not put $1,500 7 times down this Excel spreadsheet. You would put the full total of rent you're asking, and then you would provide us with the statements that you paid for your rent. And then we asked for approximately $3,000 for PPE. You would put $3,000 right here in the PPE for employees, and then provide us the receipt showing that you paid for that. And if that's all you have, then you would it should total it across here for you at, what's that, $13,500. It would total it right there. And if you fill that out, total each column with all the expenses you're requesting reimbursement for, and attach the receipts, this form is done. That's not to say that gathering receipts isn't necessarily easy, but we're asking for the total amount you're requesting here for each column, and it shouldn't exceed $15,000, and you'll need to provide us documented receipts. And if you have questions about different types of receipts, feel free to shoot us an email and give us a call. We're definitely willing to work with applicants. Official receipts are ideal, but we understand that we might have to work with some of the businesses and organizations out there to see what they can provide us to document that. So that's Exhibit A. So you have the application, Exhibit A. If you fill both those things out, you will then have to, let me see here, then have to just provide us the required financial documentation backing it up. Again, we're asking for 2019 tax return or equivalent. The word equivalent is that business form, that income statement form I showed you earlier. So if you haven't filed your taxes yet because you have an extension, you can provide us with that documentation. The purpose of this document is to show that the organization did not bring in more than $2 million in 2019. If you did, you're not eligible, and we aren't allowed to provide grants for those types of businesses by the state and Department of Finance standards. We asked for 2019 and 2020 profit and loss statements. This is for us to show that you lost 25% or more in revenue year over year. Again, if you don't have those documents, the information that you provide in the small business income statement form is also that same thing. And so if you don't have a formal documented accounting system, it'll be reflected in that income statement form that you certify. We are asking for the official documents from an accountant because it gives us more comfort in analyzing the documents, but that is a form that you can work with. We may call with some follow-up questions and just checking up on you. And so we are asking for you to provide that. But if you don't have access to that, we do have this form here. Again, we need the 2019 and 2020 kind of profit and loss statements or some sort of way to determine that you lost 25% year over year. That's another requirement. If you're a nonprofit, you don't have to provide an audited financials if you don't have them, unless you made over $500,000 in revenue in 2019. If you didn't, you're good. And that is state statute. Any nonprofit operating in the state of New Mexico, if they bring in more than 500,000, has to provide or get a professional audit done every year that they bring over 500,000. That's why that's in there. Again, you know, these eligibility standards are things that we have to adhere to because of state and federal policy. And we're trying to find ways to help businesses demonstrate that. And this is one, you know, is that you don't have to provide audited financial statements if you're under 500,000 in revenue. If you're seeking payroll reimbursement, we're asking for businesses to provide a completed ES 903A form. It's a jargony form, but it's what you submit to Department of Workforce Solutions whenever you report your employment figures and things of that nature. If you can't access those, we are working with businesses to provide us a completed payroll spreadsheet showing the number of employees, hourly wage, things of that nature. And this is documentation to show us that these are the employees you're hiring, and this is why we can provide the funding for the payroll. We have to have documentation for everything that we fund. And then certification of compliance with tax and rev. Now, this is a document, it takes 2 seconds to, not 2 seconds, maybe 5 minutes to download. But we have to be sure that all businesses are compliant with taxes. They don't owe, even if they do owe some money, they're in compliance and have a program for paying that. We just have to make sure they're good to go with New Mexico Tax and Revenue Department. How you can do that is just visit this website here, and there's a tab. And in the new application, there's explicit instructions about this, but there's a tab that says check my CRS status. Once you click that, you provide the business federal employment identification number, the New Mexico CRS number, and the zip code. You hit submit, and it pops up with a report that says, yes, you are in compliance. I did a test run on it just the other day, and I had the information there, which is information you're asked to provide in the application. And it took no more than 3 minutes. And I'm not asking that you print it. You can print it if you want to and scan it and fax it to us, or you can take a screenshot and send it over to us. And that's totally qualified as well. Other than those financial documentation, we're asking for, if you are an LLC or registered with the state, you need a certificate of good standing. This is something that was recommended by DFA as well. And this is something you can get online as well. Sole proprietors, this doesn't apply to you. You don't have to do this. You don't have to register with the state in this manner. We want a copy of an active business license to show that you're adhering to county, city, town of Edgewood business regulation and policy. And then if you're a nonprofit, just a list of the board members and a previous year organizational budget. But other than the application and Exhibit A, these are the required financial documents that we want every business to provide us. And that's so we can demonstrate, hey, we did our due diligence. This is taxpayer dollars. We have to make sure that businesses are, being forthright, and we can document that they demonstrated they were under 2 million and lost 25% revenue. So this is why we're asking for these financial documentations. We've dropped some things that were on there before because we realized that, hey, it's good to know these things, but it's not essential. And this is what I see as bare bones as we can get it. And if you don't have the 2019 tax returns, we've created another form for you to self-certify that this is how much you made, and report that to us as well. And so we're also actively trying to find ways to accommodate businesses that can't meet these exact criteria, but can still demonstrate to us that they meet the eligibility. So that's just the basic documents that are required of this program. And then step 4, once you get your application, Exhibit A completed, and provide the required financials and additional documents, You go to one of our partners here, you'll see we have 2 partners accepting applications, DreamSpring, contact information there with the website, and then we have North Central New Mexico Economic Development District. The acronym's not easier to say either. I reference them as the COG, but these are, and you see the contact information there. And these are 2 great organizations that are excited to help you out, provide technical assistance, answer your questions if you have any, and get your applications through the door. They've been working really hard and have been doing really, really strong work. And I was on the phone with DreamSpring yesterday. They're launching a new portal sometime soon for applicants just to fill out the information online, attach documents super easy, and it'll go directly to them in a way that you don't have to send emails and attach documents, send them multiple emails. It's pretty streamlined. And the COG, North Central, already has a process like that in place. And so they're great organizations. They're happy to hear from you. And in addition to reaching out to them, you can always reach out to the partners here and we can get an answer to you pretty quickly. We have a specific email for this program that will be listed on the very last slide. And so if you have immediate questions, send them there. I will be there answering them. County staff is checking that email every single day. And it was besides Saturday and Sunday, but sometimes we still are. But we provide pretty quick responses when someone sends something through that email box. So if you have pressing questions as well, feel free to reach out to us as well. With that being said, we'll move on to questions and answers, and the group can provide answers for you. I'm gonna take a little bit of a break because my throat's a little scratchy from speaking. But Chris, if you could bring up some questions that were asked and we can seek to get answers for them. Thank you.
I'd be happy to, and I will give you the caveat that some of the questions are really good questions. They're not have been real explicit. So we'll start, and anybody on the team can, Lee or Liz, Rich, or even you, Alex, can approach the answer to this. So the first question is, the application process is complicated and tedious. My small business does not keep an accountant for monthly activities. I do my own CRS taxes and have an accountant do my year end. My question is, why is it easier to obtain a loan from an NMFA than it is to get a small grant? What efforts have been made to streamline the application process? And with the NMFA, they only requested CRS taxes for April through May of 2019 to 2020. Please help us. And so my first response to that is the application process from an NMFA for the loan that you're talking about is a state loan. It's $400 million from the permanent fund that was granted by the governor for the purposes of keeping small businesses going through loans. We are taking CARES Act money, which is federally a federal grant, or excuse me, it's a federal program through the CARES Act. And that money was given to the state with specific guidelines. And then the state put around its own specific guidelines. And since this money is a grant, those guidelines are pretty specific, and the money is not expected to be paid back as a loan would be. So there are several reasons why the programs are a little bit different each. But I'll certainly let Alex or Liz or Lee approach that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And you nailed it right on its head. These are federal dollars, and we have to adhere to the guidelines by the federal policy and the policy handed down by a DFA that was given us. And so much of this process is from the criteria that was handed to us. And the only thing I think we really added was a requirement to have a business license in Santa Fe County. or one of the partner entities. Other than that, a lot of the stuff was handed down to us, and it's federal dollars, and we have to be sure that we can demonstrate all the money we give away was to businesses who qualify and are eligible. And we're trying to be as diligent about that as possible, but accommodating. And the question was also, how have you made the application process more streamlined? We have reduced some of the required documentation. We're starting to winnow down what exactly we need to demonstrate the key eligibility criteria. And then we have created certification forms for businesses who might not be able to produce the documents, such as 2019 tax returns because they have an extension, or if they don't work with an accountant every day, they have the ability to fill out the income statement form and certify it, so they don't have to call an accountant and say, hey, will you do this for me for all these months? You have the opportunity to provide that information and certify it yourself. And we have created forms such as that to make it more easier. Unfortunately, we can't change the information we need and what we have to prove, but we have provided other ways for businesses to demonstrate that. And my advice is feel free to give us a call, and we can work with you on what else or how you can demonstrate to us that you meet the criteria and eligibility. I think that's it from what I have to say on that.
Anybody else, Lee or Liz, do you want to add on to that, or should we move to the next question?
I think the
I
next
think we should
question.
do the next question.
Okay. The next question is about regarding nonprofits. Our nonprofit is the 501c3 Liberty Volunteers of Santa Fe. Provides free tutoring to adults in English as a second language, basic literacy, citizenship. All of our tutoring is free. There is no charge for the testing classes and materials. We do not charge a registration nor membership fee. All of our revenues are the result of grants and fundraising. While those efforts have had reductions due to changing priorities and budget cuts, they do not total $75,000. However, we've incurred additional expense to be able to offer tutoring virtually. Can we still apply for the grant to help defray our additional costs?
So go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead, Alex. I
Okay.
was trying to think of a good thing to say, but go ahead. I think you've got something better.
So I spoke with a nonprofit in a sort of similar situation. They had a contract with an entity that had to greatly reduce the contract because of COVID. And so they were able to show, and they got a letter supporting that those fundings were reduced, those streams of revenue were reduced because of COVID. So the nonprofit at a minimum, you would have to first be sure that the revenues that you've received and in 2019 are 25% lower than the revenues you have received in 2020. And by revenues, I know you're not accepting money or soliciting money for your services, but I'm categorizing the grants that you're getting as potential revenue. And if those are a 25% reduction, and you can demonstrate it was because of COVID, you could likely apply for the funding. The key word is, how do you demonstrate that those grants will reduce because of COVID-19? That's what you would have to show, because the reduction, again, to the CARES Act, the reduction is tied due to COVID. And so I think the question, if that came across our desk, the application, we would want to ask, okay, here's the revenue from 2019, here's what you got in 2020. They're all different grants, and it would be hard for us to determine unless you provided us some sort of statement that it was because of COVID, and we could determine it was due to COVID. That sounds a little nuanced, because that is a very that's a very interesting type of scenario, and I would invite the nonprofit to give me a call, and we can talk more in depth about that. The easiest, here's a hypothetical situation. If they're the same grants year over year that you keep getting, and there's a 25% reduction because of that, and you get a letter from the grantee or grantor saying, hey, we had to cut this grant a little bit because of COVID. that would suffice. That's like the perfect world scenario.
I think that's a really good response, Alex. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next question. I see that we have to have a business license. I am working from home and it looks like it'll take 7 to 10 days to get my license. Can I apply to the grant? And if I have just submitted the license application, that'd be too late for this if I have to wait 7 to 10 days for a license. I think one of the requirements, I think Alex mentioned this in the slides, is that you have to have been in business for at least a year. And that's a requirement that is handed to us. I believe is it a federal requirement or does it go through, is that a state requirement? I think it's part of the CARES Act. And so you have to be able to show that you've been in business prior to applying for this year's business license. But anybody else, Alex, Lee?
Unless they're referring to a business renewal, I don't see what that would, I mean, unless they're waiting in terms of their business license, it's not a new one, but they're just waiting on their, if it's a renewal that they put forward and that hasn't been responded. But I think your answer was very thorough.
Okay, thanks, Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, I hope that answers the question. Let's go on to the next question. Our business is seasonal, busy in the summer. The numbers originally requested don't reflect our busy season and our true loss. Will this be addressed? And I defer to you, Alex, or Lee, or Liz.
It's in the revised application.
I'm sorry?
We have expanded the year-over-year monthly revenue amounts in the revised application. So I think we will capture that with the revision if it's seasonal in the summer.
Okay. All right. I hope that answers that. All right,
Yeah,
here's the next question. Oh, sorry.
Before that too, to Lee's point, we asked all the way up to I think September, and so you have the ability to show the summer season. It's not just March through April or May. You have the ability to show the full spread, so we can actually see, okay, yeah, compared to summer, you're still 25% reduction. And if you can, demonstrate it was because of COVID, which if you were closed, or you could even probably cite there's no tourism coming here because the governor's health orders, restrictions, and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of ways you can do it, and so you should be able to prove that and show that.
All right, thank you. All right, so the next question is again on nonprofits. Most of us nonprofits had our 2020 funding lined up by March. We are only now facing effects of COVID-19 on 2021 income. This is difficult to report. Is there any accommodation for nonprofit cash flow patterns? And the first thing I will say is this is really a reimbursement grant. And we have to be able to show that from 2019 to 2020, there was an issue related to the COVID-19, and the 2021 income, although I understand what you're asking, it's really part of the income flow, but that's for next year. So if you can show the same kind of pattern from say 2018 to reflect 2019, and then 2019 to reflect 2020, I think that's the kind of information that we're looking for. Anybody else?
I will add to, and I'm not making any promises because I can't make promise for what's going on in Washington, D.C., but, if another bill is passed similar to the CARES Act, there could be some likelihood that money would be distributed in the same way through the same platforms. And so, just keep that in mind for potentially what's coming down the line is we could be maybe having another extended program. Again, don't hold your breath on that, but my advice to any type of organization that is hurting out there and is not able to qualify or complete the application for this round, for whatever reason, start preparing things now, because it could be that, you know, a similar program's up and running a little bit later, and it would probably be by more or less the same guidelines.
We still have about 15 more questions, and I just want to make you guys aware of time. We're here till 12:30, so we have another 20 minutes.
Okay, we'll try to speed things up. Under the business continuity category, we have established lease agreements or payments for large equipment items. Are these payments eligible? And I would say if they can be shown to be related to the COVID-19 pandemic, then we can probably figure out a way to have some of those expenses covered. But it's got to be related to the COVID-19. That is very specific in the CARES Act. Anybody else?
Yeah, and that's a question that hasn't come across the table yet. And I'll seek guidance on that from DFA. And I'll be posting some FAQs and some FAQs, especially from this webinar. And it should be posted in there within the coming days. So I will try to seek some more clarity on that and get that on the FAQs.
But I think I would say that if you closed your business and you were able to continue to pay rent and to make a lease payment under a lease agreement, then we would take those as legitimate expenses under the business continuity, because you have an obligation to pay them even though you're closed. So those are allowable under the business continuity category, if you would, that's been established by DFA.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next question. My organization would like to apply for the Small Business and Nonprofit Stabilization Grant, but am unsure if our operational budget disqualifies us. My understanding is that our operational budget must be under $2 million prior to the COVID-19. Our operational budget fluctuates year to year and has in the past been over $2 million. What is the time period that our budget must have been under $2 million? And I think it's pretty straightforward. I think they're looking from the 2019 to 2020. That's the time, and it's got to be COVID related. And I think it's very hard and fast. I hate to say that if you have revenues that are over $2 million, you are probably disqualified for the small business grant.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, I mean, they use the word operational budget. We're looking at $2 million in revenue is how it's worded. So if you have a budget that's larger, doesn't mean you necessarily brought in $2 million in revenue. And if you can show it's under $2 million in revenue, that's basically what we're asking for is 2019.
Okay. My computer is acting up on me. All right. If we've already received a PPP grant, are we eligible for this grant? And the quick answer is only if you did not qualify the same items for PPP as you would for this grant. In other words, you cannot double dip. You cannot say that we're paying employee salaries from the PPP and you're applying for this grant to pay employee salaries. It's got to be something different. Anybody else?
I would say that you're right, and that's very clear. You're not precluded from applying for it as long as the expenditures that you'd like to be reimbursed for were not included in the PPP allocation to your business or your nonprofit.
Okay. All right. Why is my computer? Okay. Is the eligibility requirements for the grant flexible? we can qualify for most of the requirements except maybe one or two. And I don't think there's a whole lot of flexibility allowed. And correct me if I'm wrong, Alex or Lee or Liz, but I don't think there's flexibility allowed because it is federal dollars and we realize we're going to be audited. And so we have to adhere to their specific guidelines very closely. So I would suggest talking to either Dream Spring or the North Central COG and talking to them about your eligibility questions and see if they can find a way around to work around that. Anything else? Okay. I own a restaurant. Our revenue dollars are down only 15%, yet our costs have skyrocketed for PPE and additional staff for extra sanitizing. Our profit margin is 0. Restaurants are only profitable at a point when the revenue exceeds the costs. Is it a waste of time for me to apply?
Unfortunately, I have to say yes, because the condition of the grant is that it's revenue based in terms of hitting at least a minimum of 25% in a reduction of revenue. And at least for this grant, it doesn't look at NOI. So operating expenses are not in the equation for the calculation at all, unfortunately. And the only thing that I would say is that perhaps if something else comes out in the future and the requirements and eligibility are different, where it actually takes into consideration both revenue and operating expenses, or just a flat NOI change, that we would be able to do something, but not under the eligibility requirements for this grant.
All right, thank you, Lee. That was good. All right, this is another question regarding PPP, and the question is, if we receive PPP money, will we qualify for this grant? And it all depends upon what you qualified for PPP with versus what you are applying for in this grant. Again, you cannot double dip. The federal government doesn't like that. And if you can show that you have other expenses other than you used in the PPP, then we can certainly see if we can get some grant money for that. All right, next question. Nonprofits don't just get monthly income. We get donations and grants that aren't month by month. How do you want us to show that? And my response would be, we are asking that it's a 2019-2020 comparison. The biggest comparison is between Q1 and Q2. And so if you can show that overall your yearly income is a certain amount and you had a decrease due to COVID from the following year, represented by Q1 and Q2 specifically, then that should suffice. Alex, Lee?
Well, I think the other thing that you could do if you wanted to have a broader look is to use the supporting documentation that we put together that shows revenue for a longer period of time. And that may capture some of the fluctuations in some of the other revenue streams.
Okay. All right, next question. Our fiscal year ends July 31st, 2020, and we will commence our audit soon, but we do not expect to be finished until early 2021. Will you just need our last audited 990? And I believe we need audited 990s once you hit the $500,000 threshold mark of revenue. So if you're below that, we will not need an audited 990. Alex, Lee, anything?
No, I think that's good. And I think we have to consider, we have about 12 more questions and about 12 more minutes.
We're working on it. All right, next question. Can we use funds toward the expense of contractor salaries? And the question to ask is that contractor, it's not an employee? Then I don't see how you can qualify under employees, but you may be able to qualify under a different category as long as it's COVID related. Alex, Lee, Liz?
I would say that it's a no, because they aren't an employee, and technically as a contractor, I believe they would be able to apply for funding as well for their own business. But it depends too on what do you mean by contractor. If you hired a contractor to reconfigure your outdoor space for COVID, like your restaurant or something, I do think that would potentially qualify. But I will get down to FAQs with some more guidance on that. Yeah.
And that's a good example, Alex, because if anyone has used a contractor to do any type of business redesign, I would say that it typically would be eligible, provided that the contractor is not related to the entity and that you've actually paid them for whatever the services are, as long as it's within the redesign categories.
Okay, that's a good response. Let's move on to the next question. For this application question, B18, is your business owned by a socially disadvantaged group? To what percentage of ownership would this apply? I don't have a really good response to that. That is kind of a question that is asked just, I think, more for demographics of what kind of businesses are applying for the grant. Alex, Lee, Liz?
I don't think we allocated a percentage to it.
No, we did
Just
not.
asked you to check the line if some portion of the business falls within those categories. That's all.
So it doesn't, it's not specific to you receiving the grant, what percentage you are disadvantaged. All right, next question. I'm sure you mentioned this, but can the grant money be used to help pay back the PPP or EIDL loans? My quick response is no, it's not supposed to be used for that, because you are not supposed to be asking for grant money for the same thing that you ask for PPP or EIDL loans.
Correct.
All right. Something about the question is, will the North Central COG provide an online application? And this question was answered live. So let's go on to the next question, because yes, they have the online application.
Yes.
All right, next question. Who mandated the $2 million revenue limit for eligibility? Was that a federal, state, or local government requirement? And as far as I know, that's a federal requirement.
Yes.
Is that right, Alex Lee?
It's hard to determine, but that was the guidance we got from the state. Where the state picked that up, it could have certainly been the federal requirement. But the CARES Act is very, very long, and I've read through several portions of it. And I do think it stems from federal guidance.
Thank you. Next question. A follow-up on the eligibility requirement to be in business before March 2019. We acquire a hotel property in December 2019. That hotel was business before March 2019, but we change ownership and name of the business. Does this qualify us due to this eligibility requirement? And my quick response is no. It has to be a business that you owned and operated. Just because it was a previously owned and operated business that you acquired, I don't believe that qualifies you. Alex, Lee, Liz?
No, I think that says it, Chris.
Okay. All right. And I'm working on it, Liz. My computer is a little slow. Okay,
I think we're good. You picked up speed there, Chris.
good, thank you. Next question, can we ask for this grant for contractors? The answer is no. I'll just leave it at that unless Alex, Lee, or Liz, you want to chime in.
I think Lee had mentioned earlier, unless these were contractors, I think what Alex had said was the contractors would be able to apply on their own behalf. But if this contract worked to rearrange what your setup was in terms of if you're a restaurant or whatnot, then yes, you could submit this because maybe those were expenses due to COVID changes that you had to make into your establishment to keep people safer.
Yeah, and maybe some clarification is you can't request payroll reimbursement for a contractor.
Right.
But you can potentially, if you can demonstrate that, hey, I hired this contractor to install plexiglass. Well, that's a reconfiguring of space, and it's an expense that's related to COVID. And so that should be something that could be qualified.
Okay, next question. We are close to finishing our application. We would like the grant to help reimburse our payroll for March through April, but we did receive the PPP loan. That loan covered us April through July. So is this going to be an eligible expense? Also, what is your confidentiality with concerns of my tax returns? Who will be looking at them, and what do you do with them when you have reviewed my application? All right, so there's two parts. The first part, the PPP, like I mentioned, the federal government doesn't like double dipping. So if we can prove that there is separation between what your PPP application was and what you're asking for in this grant, then that would be an eligible expense as long as we can show that. As far as a confidentiality agreement of tax returns, I will have to admit we are a public agency, and any documents that come into our possession are eligible under the Inspection of Public Records Act. So we cannot maintain that confidentiality. Is that right, Alex, Lee, Liz?
Right. Yes. If requested. Yeah. And just to address the issue of the payroll request. So if your PPP application and the loan application is very clear about what is reimbursed, then you can come in and you can request payroll reimbursement for, say, Q3, and you won't be double dipping if you actually produced the application and received the loan document, say, for April for some portion of Q1 and Q2 is what it sounded like. March and April flowing into Q1 and the end of Q1 and the beginning of Q2. So if you look at what you need, Q3 is open to you if you have payroll and it's COVID related.
All right, that concludes our questions, Alex. Do you want to wrap up? Oh, you have Dream Spring and North Central on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, please contact the third party. This is done for a couple different reasons. One is I want to emphasize the fact that we have a contract paying the third party to help you. So you do not have any expense to apply for this grant. And then the third party is there for a reason. We are going to be audited, so that's part of it. We'd like to keep as much separation between the application that comes in and then the review committee, which is done by all the partners and the third parties. So we just want to make sure that we shine as much sunlight as we can into this process. So I encourage you to go to Dream Spring or North Central COG and ask them to help you. They will be very excited to help you. They get paid upon completed applications. Anything else?
That's great. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for being so thorough in all the responses to everyone on the team. And so we have the information that's up on the screen. We will be posting this webinar on both City of Santa Fe and the County of Santa Fe's page, as well as the Town of Edgewood, and it will continue on in the City of Santa Fe's YouTube page if you would like to share it with anyone else, or if you would like to go back and review any of the information. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Liz. Oh, she left.